My name is Amy Foster. I studied French and drama at the University of Birmingham and graduated in 2005. Now I work for a charity called Living Street. It's the national charity for everyday walking, and I'm one of the engagement coordinators, working on the charitable arm of our organisation, where we're reaching out into communities and empowering them to make the kind of change they want to see in their area. So when I first graduated, I was really working on sort of establishing a career in the arts, and for a period of time I worked in the music industry, sort of working on events and artist management and support, and moving into working for a big multinational music company. But after a while I'd started doing some tutoring work and supporting at a Saturday school in East London that was about sort of targeting disadvantaged children and communities and offering educational opportunities that they wouldn't be able to target otherwise, was the framing of it. And doing that work, it made me realise that actually perhaps I'd want to try teaching, because I miss that sense of the kind of agency that I think, you know, working in sort of drama and in the arts, where you can be responding to things that are happening in society around you, where you're sort of trying to take complex messages and reframe them in a way that's sort of comprehensible to different audiences, and again sort of building relationships and culture, being part of kind of like a positive change for the future. And so so I did my PGCE in London and then taught in London for about a decade, and then during that time I was also doing some voluntary work for charities and in my community, and it meant that earlier this year I actually moved from teaching to working with Living Streets as a permanent job, and now working in engagement. And just to say, and alongside that, one of the reasons for that change was also that to working with Living Streets is that I was elected as a local councillor in the elections in London in May. And so again, that's another area that it's not a job, it's still counted as like voluntary work, but it's very much, I feel, comes back to that approach of storytelling and community building that really came through that my study at Birmingham and being an arts graduate. So in our team, we talk about some of our work having a sort of bread and butter element, the kind of like things that happen quite regularly. So our engagement team sits within a broader policy and communications team at the charity. So kind of regular tasks are sort of the communications part of it, sort of engaging with our volunteers, sending them updates on things, advising them of opportunities that may come about. But then also there's the sort of planning to sort of campaign actions, inspiring them to take part or to sort of feed into a conversation. So as the engagement team, we're very much building that kind of like two-way relationship with people who are interested in the aims of the charity, but also making sure they kind of understand what our vision is and what our goals are, so that we are aligned in that work. And then the bit that I've been really enjoying, that I'd say is the kind of the sort of special projects element that we work on and built out of my voluntary work, is around sort of calling like diversifying our local group network. So making sure that we're bringing new voices into the conversations around what it means to feel safe and that you belong in your community. Asking questions around walking. Does everyone feel safe to walk? What are the barriers to that? We know that often it's motor vehicle traffic, or it can be things like, bin day, where things are being left out if you need more space, and sort of level pavements, but also social safety and those kind of questions as well. So we're trying to develop an approach. So again, come back to the sense of an approach that's about storytelling and bringing people together, asking sort of like co-creation, getting people that we're working with to tell them what they'd like to do. We've been working with photographers. There's a social documentary photographer we've worked with who we've discussed how photos as a method of storytelling, a sort of more gentler way to sort of talk about things that we notice that make us feel uncomfortable when we're out in the public realm or in our communities, and things that we would like more of, and using them sort of kind of like manifestos, or to ask decision makers for the changes we would like to see. And then also alongside that, another project is with different partners from universities across the UK, building on work that was done during COVID. So it was funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and it's called Walk Create, and it's about, again, different barriers to walking, but using creative approaches. So sound, light, storytelling, and sort of ways of sort of recognizing that where there are barriers and we don't feel able to access our community, access our streets, it has a negative impact on mental and physical well-being. And so it's trying to, again, make spaces for people to kind of share those experiences and sort of give confidence that will sort of hopefully support our work going forward about bringing different voices into the discussion around public realm. As a charity, we have just recruited our first youth campaigns officers. So I feel like this is something we've been reflecting on a lot, about how we can bring younger people into our profession, like what it would mean to get a sense of how the charity sector works, and campaigns in particular. And so what we've learned from that experience so far is the value of university jobs boards. So our two new team members, our youth officers, found the roles on their university jobs board. If you're considering this career, I'd say the key skill that in campaigning that we'd be looking for is, evidence of campaigning. So trying to, have experience of that in your life, so you've got something to talk about. It can be small, it can be large, but it is, finding campaign organisations to get a sense of like how that is planned, how people identify the issue, how they collect the evidence, and they go about trying to bring the change really confidently. I think also talk about your lived experience is something that could be really beneficial, because if you can talk about your campaigning work and it is framed for, one example I have is a colleague from my political party said that when she was at secondary school, the food that was being served was terrible, and the school was going to have a new contract, and it would have really, put the food staff team out of business. And they had a protest where they brought their own food in, and they started an alternative sort of like tuck bank, and basically forced the school to sort of reassess its procurement processes. And so I think even if there's something that probably seems like a small thing, or perhaps you don't recognise the value of it, I think being able to talk about it really clearly is an example of how you found an issue and you've acted. And remember that it is about storytelling. So finding opportunities to practice writing. If you can submit things to blogs at the university or the university newspaper, is really valuable in writing to a short amount of time, being able to put a call to action in, like really clearly and succinctly emphasize what it is you need people to do. And, finding opportunities to practice speaking to people and telling the story.